Welcome back to The Breakdown with me, NLW. It's a daily podcast on macro, Bitcoin, and the big picture power shifts remaking our world. What's going on, guys? It is Friday, June 20th, and that means it's time for the Friday 5. Before we get into it, however, if you are enjoying The Breakdown, please go subscribe to it, give it a rating, give it a review, or if you want to dive deeper into the conversation, come join us on the Breakers Discord. You can find a link in the show notes or go to bit.ly/breakdownpod. All right, friends, back today with another Friday 5. Scott and I were joking that this was the first time in a little while now that it actually felt like one of those slow summer weeks. In general, having done this type of content for a really long time, there is something of a summer lull. There tends to be a little bit less news, a little bit less engagement around the news, even in an industry like crypto that is 24/7, 365. However, for the last few weeks, it has been nonstop all the time, and so there has been absolutely no slowdown of the sort, and this week kind of felt a little calmer. Still, the hilarious thing about that sentiment is that in this so-called calmer week, we had major stablecoin legislation passed in a bipartisan manner, and a bunch of other stories which a year ago would have been totally headline news. Anyways, that's enough for me for now. Let's dive into the show and see what the story was this week.
This is one of those normal summer weeks where there's not any huge stories that are impacting price, but still worth discussing and unpacking everything that's going on. We're back. Last week you were keynoting. You were busy keynoting.
Gallivanting around Europe.
I mean, it's like your priorities are all off. You know, you could have been here talking about all this important news and you were out keynoting. But I think we'll start here with, that's the wrong story. Analysts say Bitcoin's 100,000 levels being cemented as the base price for investors. So I guess generally here we can just talk about price action, the fact that Bitcoin seems to be effectively glued in this range in the low 100,000s. But even with all the dips we've seen across markets and all the uncertainty, it just doesn't break below 100,000.
Yeah, I mean, I think that certainly we are, we're tracking Bitcoin, I think, for a couple different reasons. One, it's always a leading indicator of what's going to sort of happen next in public markets, especially when, a lot of the macro things that have been shaping potential market action have happened overnight, in various regions. So that's sort of one reason to look at it. But I think that it's absolutely the case that the longer that it hangs out at this level, the more it creates kind of this psychological, attachment. We had a psychological attachment to 100K on the upside for so long. It sort of makes sense that we're sort of forming that on the downside as well.
Yeah, I mean, from a psychological level perspective, there's no more impactful number than 100,000.
Right.
It literally was talked about for years, to your point. So you've got to imagine that there's a lot of people who are like, I'm just going to buy it every time it gets anywhere close to that.
Yeah.
But I am surprised we haven't even seen 99,980 or anything. It really has held entirely above 100,000.
Yeah. No, it's extremely notable. I mean, again, it's one of those, it's a self-reinforcing sort of prophecy. So I hope that it continues to hang out here and this becomes the reset forever.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. It's Selkis that always used to tweet, I can't believe this is the last time we'll see Bitcoin under X, right? So maybe we can jinx it by tweeting that, but generally it does seem like it's been really, really strong. And that's obviously, while we still have a lot of geopolitical uncertainty, Trump hints he'll hold off Iran strike, give diplomacy time. I think this is what a lot of people are watching at this point.
Yeah,
it's incredible how quickly we absorb what's happening in the world and markets seem to shrug it off. I mean, the very fact that Iran and Israel are lobbing missiles at each other on a daily basis seems like it would have had a greater impact on markets, but it hasn't. And immediately markets just basically moved on to what would the United States do? Well, it seems like we're still sort of in a holding pattern on that.
Yeah, markets faded this as a thing that they had to care about really, really quickly, rightly or wrongly. I mean, basically, when this started happening, that was the debate on Twitter was World War III or nothing burger, and markets voted, not nothing burger in terms of people's lives, but in terms of what they were going to care about very, very quickly. Doesn't mean they're right, but that's certainly, there's pretty clear consensus. Now, I think that you're right that a lot of this has to do with the various signals that Trump and the administration are giving at any given time. And it certainly doesn't seem like we're cascading towards inevitable, U.S. involvement right now. So I think that gives markets a reason to be a little bit more calm about it. But it's a fascinating one for sure.
Yeah, and sort of the last topic I think here that's relevant when talking about price action and what's happening with the market in general is that we continue to see these relatively historic inflows into the Bitcoin ETFs, Ethereum ETFs as well, by the way. But 2.4 billion in 8 days, a pretty astounding number considering price isn't moving.
Yeah, yeah, it's there's a lot of movement over here for for not clear reasons why.
Yeah, you would think that if you have 2.4, 2.5 billion in, just over a week in buying on the ETF side, that you would see spot price reflecting that.
People were one. I mean, one of the sources of, or one of the discourses around this is whether we're seeing some of that flight to safety behavior show up there rather than in actual price. Is that an indicator of that, or is it something else entirely? Hard to tell. Obviously, it's thank God, because otherwise people like us wouldn't have the ability to create content speculating on things. But it's it's notable for some reason or other.
Yeah, talk about the real flight to safety around the world. It's obviously stablecoins, right? And I think that's our next topic in general. Senate passes Genius stablecoin bill, giving crypto industry first major legislative win. This obviously has now passed the Senate with tremendous bipartisan support. I believe 68 votes in favor. That does not happen in the Senate for anything.
Yep.
Much less a crypto related bill. So that's astounding. I spoke to Haggerty actually randomly on Wednesday, the day after this happened. We'd had it on the books for months, and I just kind of got impeccable timing. But he said he doesn't think there'll be many impediments in the House, that they're already obviously speaking with their counterparts there. And the Stable Act that was proposed in the House is not far different from the Genius Act. And obviously, Trump is pounding the pavement on this to get it done. Right. He's on Truth Social saying this is one of his priorities. So it seems like this is going to happen. This is our first of many stablecoin stories, but let's stop here for the moment and talk about the Genius Act.
Yeah, I mean, after all the bluster and all the last minute, is this, are things changing? Is there a resurgence of the anti-crypto army? Like all of these considerations, push comes to shove, the bill actually addressed a lot of the concerns and had large bipartisan consensus. It's actually very encouraging to see that that as much as things got sort of loud towards the last minute, it appears to be cascading ahead. Now, the one sort of like poison pill question in the House is whether there are a large group of people, including many people that we tend to agree with on these issues, that are really intent on getting the market structure bill combined. Warren Davidson among them, and I don't exactly see the logic, as it so clearly is not going to happen. But there's that's the sort of one wrinkle that I'm keeping track of in the House debate. I don't think there's issues with the reconciliation of two just stablecoin bills. It's a question of whether the market structure bill can find its way in there too.
That would be a disaster. Market structure is so much more complicated than legislating on stablecoins. This is so clearly important for the US dollar, for the United States. These already exist, they're already successful. Wrapping in market structure, which is going to have to dictate what's a security and what's a commodity, how exchanges can operate, who can custody, whether it can be the same broker and custodian. Market structure is literally everything else. Wrapping these together, that goes through the House, gets complicated, goes back to the Senate, back to the House, back to the Senate. That's no way that gets done by August if they do that.
Yeah, it's so complicated, in fact, that there are basically backup bills that were introduced by Emmer and others to deal with just parts of the market structure bill, specifically the securities versus commodity designation. They ripped that part out as, if we can't get market structure done, at least let's have that clarity, because that's such a big thorny issue. We can kind of focus that in. So given that people are trying to rip pieces out of the market structure bill to try to get, individual pieces passed, it seems unlikely to me that we're going to be able to graft that whole thing onto another piece of legislation, which, while bipartisan, was still not an easy, road to hoe to get it to where it is. So, we'll see. It could also just be talk. It could be political strategy to get the debate, so who knows?
Yeah. And as we talk about that, clearly we had impeccable timing, as we've talked about, from Circle with their IPO. Circle stock nears $200 per share, rises over 500% 2 weeks after going public. So they nailed this right before the Genius Act obviously was passed, but they caught this perfect moment in time where there was this heavy, heavy thirst for a way to invest in stablecoins, and there really wasn't. And now you could obviously buy Circle and Coinbase stock, obviously flying at the same. Take a look; it's trading up 14.5% pre-market, up another $29 right now. So it's going to be opening around 230.
Yeah, I mean, I thought you were going to put up a picture of Jeremy Allara's Scrooge McDuck swimming in his pool of gold after this one. But no, we talked about this before, but it is very clear that all the market cared about was exposure to stablecoin thesis, and all of the details around, well, all the details just didn't matter ultimately, but this is even more than, stock price is always reflexive in the sense that it goes up and people pay more attention and it gets stronger, and that creates more opportunities for it to actually get stronger, right? There's always that sort of reflexivity. But in this case, I think it's even more important given that Circle remains at the moment the sort of stable, legitimate or at least regulated stablecoin infrastructure in the US. And the more that it goes up, the more that institutions get involved and decide to pick this horse rather than betting on whatever sort of, bank stablecoin is going to come next, the more that Circle has the ability to compete when those bank stablecoins inevitably show up.
Yeah, it's just absolutely wild to see how successful this has been. And with all the missteps and bad launches that we've seen in crypto, it's just nice to see one get a massive, massive win. And following on the heels of this, it's going to be private stable coins left and right. I mean, we've got stablecoin adoption by corporates poised to grow after U.S. Senate passes key bill. You got Walmart and Amazon publicly saying they're going to do this. Meta, obviously, already floating the idea of bringing back Libra or some form of that. And of course, you move over from the technologists and corporates to the banks. As we know, JPMorgan pushes JPMD pilot on Base, says deposit tokens beat stablecoin. So it's not exactly a stablecoin, but something similar.
Don't you dare use the word stablecoin to describe their thing, which is a stablecoin, but not exactly a stablecoin.
Yeah, how dare you? An algorithmic, non-algorithmic, sometimes stablecoin. But on Base, I did not have on my bingo card that JPMorgan would be going to the degenerate layer 2 world to start testing things.
Certainly that is absolutely the most notable part of that announcement. JPMorgan has been messing around with private and their own blockchains forever. And, obviously those things are connected sort of vaguely to existing infrastructure, but this is the sort of, the move to a public infrastructure like this is very, very different play for them. And I think shows just, where the world is headed. Today's episode of The Breakdown is brought to you exclusively by Grayscale. Grayscale is almost certainly a name you know. They've been offering exposure to crypto for over a decade now and offer over 20 different crypto investment products ranging from single asset to diversified to thematic exposure to crypto and the broader crypto industry. They have long been innovators at the intersection of TradFi and crypto, and one of the benefits for a lot of us is that Grayscale products are available right through your existing brokerage or IRA. Now, of course, investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. For more information and important disclosures, visit grayscale.com. Go to grayscale.com to explore their full suite of crypto investment products and invest in your share of the future.
It should be noted also, we saw announcements from Bank of America that they're working on this Société Générale. I don't speak French, so, pardon my horrible Pepe Le Pew accent there. But this is coming stablecoin coming to every institution near you. There's going to be a sort of a bit of a fog too, that is already being exploited politically, where companies are going to talk about adopting stablecoins, and it'll be unclear, or at least made to feel unclear, whether that means they're going to adopt stablecoins as a tool, or a payment that they accept versus creating their own stablecoin. If you ask the anti-crypto army right now, every company that is announcing that they're going to interact with stablecoins is going and trying to create their own stablecoin, which is obviously not what's actually happening. But that's a narrative. I mean, it won't be interoperable. They'll just, I think the free market will decide, and we'll probably end up with a few incumbents and maybe a few of these larger ones using them for their own private purposes, like a JPMorgan, and everyone else will probably get washed out. Yep. That's my next story here. Is that Musk's X to launch trading and payments and push toward Everything Act report. We've been hearing about this for a very long time. Of course, we were already supposed to have Doge taking over the world as the base payment for the planet, starting on X. But it seems like this is a real announcement that they're going to be pushing towards open trading and payments. Interestingly, I remember they kind of had a deal with eToro there for a while. Kind of never heard about it again, but I know they had sort of a trading, or at least you would get the stock ticker price. Honestly, I don't even remember. And payments they've been talking about forever. And that's his background.
Yeah. I mean, look, both of these things are theoretically interesting and are going to be practically interesting based entirely on how much people actually want to use this for that. It's a very hard thing to go from where Twitter/X is now to the everything app that he envisions. When it comes to trading, it's like, who is the audience that is going to trade on X? You kind of have to, like, it doesn't seem like it's going to be existing established traders. So you have to think that it's maybe like new people who haven't come in yet, which is totally plausible, I guess, theoretically. But I don't know. It's interesting, but I would not put my I'm not particularly bullish on the likelihood of success.
I 100% agree with that. It's not like your average Robinhood client is going to just flip over and say, I want to trade on X.
Yeah. But I also, listen, if the idea of an everything app for, an English speaking market is compelling to some people, having Elon do it, who has the ability to do things that don't work for a very long time until maybe they do work, is a good place for it to happen, right? Elon, if he does this, he's not going to turn around and turn it off 6 months later because it wasn't performing. He's going to beat that thing to the ground until it until it potentially works. So, we'll see.
Okay, so you and I have had a lot of conversations about Bitcoin treasury companies and what those look like in context of the greater market. It's clearly becoming more obvious that these are the altcoins of this cycle to some degree. But we've started to see, obviously, XRP treasury companies and Solana XRP companies. Now we got the first report was that TRX was going public, that Tron was going public in a reverse merger. Now the story, I guess, has been clarified a bit. Justin Sun linked firm plans to go public in US with TRX acquisition strategy. I believe they also had in the original announcement that Eric Trump was an advisor. And then he said, no, I'm just his buddy, but I'm not an advisor. But the topic we had was, is this putting in the top for crypto treasury companies?
I mean, I hate calling tops, but boy, if you were going to be comfortable calling a top, I don't know. Look, I think there's clearly still room to run in terms of market demand for Bitcoin treasury companies. That's pretty inarguable at this point. And so the big issue is that even if this is the top, it could be a very long time before the market realizes it was the top, and that's the in between intervening part is where it all gets chaotic. But I don't know. I will only say this. I know a bunch of people who are sort of outside crypto who have been invigorated by the return of the SPAC structure as a tool, not because they want to chimoff it, but because getting certain types of vehicles public faster is actually like a useful thing to have access to. And boy, are they like, crypto's going to screw it up again for us after they heard this announcement. And it's
whether it's him or not, I already said that when it wasn't TRX, to be fair. Yeah. But it is pretty crazy. I guess it was Dan from Chart Guys who was on yesterday, and he was basically saying, I think it was him, but he was saying that the altcoin market is suffering because you can just go trade Coinbase and Circle.
Yeah.
Like if you get, or Nakamoto or 21 or MicroStrategy, like the same people who were investing in ICOs and making these quick 20, 30 X's, if not more, are now playing in public markets where there's 100X the liquidity and it's a stock.
I don't know.
We never learn.
We'll see how it ends.
We never learn. Listen, our final story is not necessarily crypto related, but everything is apparently crypto related. Fed officials hold rates again. Still see 2 cuts by year end. I mean, these 2 cuts have been right there on the horizon.
Yeah, the reporting on this is actually weird because there was this is the most divided I think that the Fed has ever been in terms of where they think things are going to land. Not divided in terms of necessarily of disagreement about what should be done in the short term, but divided in terms of what they're what they believe will come next. Powell's whole conversation was about humility and having no idea how these tariffs were going to impact things and needing more time to see. And when it came to the cuts, I think it was there by a margin of like 1 vote, the consensus was that there were going to be 2, but the number of governors who thought that we were going to get 0 cuts this year jumped from like 4 to 6. So you got one group who's, still on the 2 train, but you have another group that's growing that thinks we're going to see no cuts. So the TLDR is that no one has any idea. And, to their credit, they're saying they have no idea, basically. And in the circumstance of having no idea, Powell's default is always going to be to turtle up and do nothing.
Trump had some not so kind words for him again this week. He had kind of backed off on the rhetoric for a while. What did he call him? I don't know if he called him dumb or not so smart, but it's like you can tell that he's trying not to do it. And then once he starts vomiting about Powell, just goes and goes and goes.
Yeah, I don't know if he's trying that hard.
Maybe not. Yeah. Okay. Good point. I don't think. I don't think maybe it's fair. I think you love him or hate him, Donald Trump's probably gonna tell you what he thinks.
Yeah. No, listen. The tough thing is, I don't know. This is right now what you should do with Fed policy is an area where a lot of reasonable people actually just disagree. It's not strong consensus. I do think that in general, I'm seeing more people peel over to the side of it's time to cut than head in the other direction. But it's hard to argue that things are like real clear, given just how much is up in the air. We have real volatility and we have self-imposed volatility right now, and those two things combine to a very tricky environment.
Yeah, man, we cooked through that. Honestly, though, this is still way more exciting than last summer.
Yes,
we were doing these shows last summer. We were like 5.
Yeah.
How about the Friday 1.5? And we really don't even want to talk about the half.
Seriously, let's go. Let's do the thing that they do like on the top 40 countdown, where they go like list last year's top 5 and listen to the full first top 1 song just to kill time. Yeah,
because they actually had good songs. Well, yeah, we had bad songs last summer in that context. So I'm glad that we're actually talking about huge things. I think it's actually more just a function of how big news has become small news as we've become mainstream and such a part of the popular narrative.
Yeah,
there was obviously a time when a stablecoin bill passing would have filled 5 hours of conversation for 2 months.
Yep. Nope. Now it's de rigueur. It's just part of the scene.
I'll take I'll take Bitcoin at 105.
Exactly. It's there are worse situations to have just be normalized.
By the way, I love the new emails coming from Blockwork for the breakdown. I don't know if they're new, but I've started getting them.
They are. We've integrated the brands, which was always kind of the intent, is to sort of like bring, make the breakdown have its own life that's not just me. So excited to see that. For those who don't subscribe to the what is the breakdown newsletter, used to be the Blockworks daily newsletter. It's great. It's some of my favorite writing in the crypto space. So
wait, so that is the old Blockworks newsletter is now the breakdown newsletter?
Correct.
Dude, that is huge.
Yeah.
Congratulations. I didn't know. I thought I was just like, honestly, I guess I should have noticed I wasn't getting the Blockworks email anymore. But the fact that it started appearing as the breakdown, I was like, yeah, it is really, really cool. Really well done.
It's great. Good stuff. Yep.
See you guys next week.